What's up, passionate DJs? I'm David Michael, and today we're talking about the Denon DJ PRIME lineup of DJ players. And, if you're a user of the Denon PRIME players, you already know a few things about it. You probably chose the PRIME players because of the extreme value that you get, the feature set that you get for the money. And the cool thing about the Denon players, the PRIME lineup in particular, is that Denon has been pretty dedicated to releasing updates for these players that not only fix bugs and things like that, but also add features. So today we're going to be talking about the latest version of Engine OS 1.6, which is the software that runs on these players. I'll be demonstrating it on this beautiful SC6000 PRIME player, which I have on loan from the DJHookup.com, which is the best place for you to be able to buy DJ gear. Go and check them out at the DJHookup.com for all your DJ gear needs. But today we're going to be talking about how these players have gotten better thanks to this 1.6 update. Now specifically we're going to be focusing on the new Dropbox integration, the new dual waveform view for dual layer playback, and the Serato integration on the PRIME players. Okay, so here we are looking at the top of the SC6000 player. I'm going to go ahead and switch it on really quick, and we'll get this thing going. And so the cool thing about this is if you've already, you can see when it boots up what version of Engine OS you're running. In this case, 1.5.3. The latest as of the making of this video is 1.6, so we're going to go ahead and download and install that, and then see what the latest updates are to the Engine OS. Because these players just keep getting better thanks to the addition of these new features. Now the cool thing is, as you can see here, if you've ever connected your player to your Wi-Fi before, it will actually check and let you know, hey, there's new firmware available, maybe you want to check that out, and it'll tell you where to go. So I'm going to tell it to remind me later, even though we're going to fix that here shortly. So what I'm going to do is go over here to the computer. You can go to denondj.com/downloads. And you're going to find whichever player or controller is relevant to you, in my case the SC6000 PRIME. And the way that I want to go about this is updating the firmware on the device itself. Now there are a couple of ways you can do this. You can see here there's a PC and Mac version, and you can update using the Engine software while connected to your laptop. But I want to do it the standalone way because it's universal. You could even do it at a gig if you wanted to, or something like that. So you basically just download this file and you put it on a USB stick, and then you update it on the player itself. So I went ahead and downloaded that. And then when it came down, the other cool thing is you can go here on this download page and they have the info next to it, and this info actually links directly to their release note history. And Denon is really good about their release notes. They're very straightforward, and you can really see just kind of at a glance in simple bullet points the new features and also the features and improvements of the latest version, and it goes all the way back, and it keeps it, it's very like human readable. It's not like a bunch of tech speak. It's not too bad in that department. So yeah, download that file. You can see it showed up here. I'm going to get my USB drive, plug that in. So here you can see the SC6000 update file that we downloaded, and over here is my USB drive. So I'm just going to copy that over to the root directory there. Then once that's done, I'm going to safely eject this drive. By here on the Mac, you just say eject, and then I'm going to put it in the front of the Denon player, and then we'll go from there. Okay, so back over here to the player, I'm going to go ahead and put the USB drive into the front there. I'll select that media source, and I'm going to go to the utilities by holding down the view button for 2 seconds. We're going to scroll down. You can see it's telling us there's an update available here. And we're going to update the firmware, and we're just going to reboot and go into firmware update mode. This may take up to 2 minutes, it warns us. Now, just the tech geek in me wants to make sure everybody knows, if it's not already clear, once this starts updating, don't touch anything. Leave it alone until it's done. Make sure you don't lose power, don't hit any buttons, just let it finish. That's just general firmware update advice. So while it's updating, let's just take a look at some of these notes here. So the latest changes here, or the newest features in 1.6 for Engine OS. One of the big ones is Dropbox integration. It's a really handy feature if you want to have sort of a cloud collection, but you don't want to like subscribe to any of the cloud services. You have like your own collection, you just want to be able to access it anywhere. Of course, they've added Beat Source Link, so now the entire Prime series supports Beatport and Beat Source Link as a streaming service. This one is really cool. Dual waveform view for layers A and B on the 5000 and 6000 and the /M players. There was kind of a lot of buzz about the Pioneer players and their dual waveform view. The Denons have that, but now they have the ability, since they have dual layer capability, meaning you can play 2 tracks on one player at the same time. This lets you now see a view that shows you 2 kind of full-size waveforms stacked on top of each other, seeing each layer at the same time without having to kind of swap back and forth. So we're going to check that out. That sounds pretty neat. They also have added flexible beat grid support. So if you have tracks that have a changing tempo, Engine OS devices now can support that kind of flexible beat grid. So that's great. If you have a Prime 4, they've added track preview to that. They've added just a couple of quality of life things here, the ability to double tap to load tracks, a retrigger option for saved loops, and some other things here. They also did a couple of fixes and improvements. This is worth taking a look at. They improved collection navigation behavior in a few ways here, a couple of UI things, and then they tell you about all the issues that they've fixed. Now, if you come down to the 1.5.3, that was the version we were running already. In that version, they updated the platter response on the SC6000. So you see, it's really easy to just scroll down this and see, hey, how have my players gotten better since I've bought them or since they were released, over time. You can see at 1.5.1 is when they added SoundCloud and Beatport Link. And all these other things here, microphone threshold utility for the Prime 4. So, right around this time, the Prime 4 and 2 and the Prime Go came out, so you can see all those kind of fixes and updates for that stuff. So, yeah, this is really pretty handy. You can see when Wi-Fi connectivity was added to the players in 1.4, that was a big deal. These players didn't launch with, well, the 6000 did, but these players didn't launch with Wi-Fi connectivity enabled. That came with 1.4, and that was just, kind of awesome to just suddenly get that new feature. Okay, so it looks like our player's done. We're going to come back over here. We've got our drive plugged in here. Okay. And so now what we're going to do is, since we're running the proper latest version of the OS, let's go ahead and go back to our utilities. Now this is how to connect to Wi-Fi. If you've never done that before, you can just go into your utilities by holding view for 2 seconds, come in here, open it, and then connect to your Wi-Fi network. Okay, we're going to go back in there. Alright, now we're going to scroll down. We can see all these different streaming services that are supported. If you have any of these services, you can enable them here. But we're going to keep scrolling down here, and now we've got Dropbox. So let's go ahead and check out the Dropbox integration, because this is actually pretty cool the way this is implemented. I'm going to enable that. Okay, so now back here at our normal screen, you can see up here if we click on our drive, our source icon up here, Dropbox is listed as a source. So we can click that, and since I haven't connected to Dropbox on here before, it's going to ask me to connect the device, so that instead of having to type in the password and stuff on here, this is just like when you log into Netflix or something on your smart TV. So we're just going to go over here to our computer and go to the URL it tells us, enginedj.com/Dropbox auth. Okay. Now we're going to log in with Dropbox. Now since I've already set up Dropbox on this computer here, we should just be able to kind of auto log in, I assume. Yes, let's give Engine OS the ability to do that. Okay, so now it's showing us over here on the device an authorization code, so we're going to type that in. And pair now, and all done. Your device will activate within a few seconds. Oh, it said, okay, there we go. Dropbox, your collection is ready and now selectable as a source. Sweet. So, okay, there we are, Passionate DJ on Untitled. So, here's the important thing. You'll notice that it's kind of listed up here with like your USB drives and stuff. Denon says basically the way that this works is the Dropbox source works just like any like removable drive. Okay, so we're just gonna go there and select it, and you have to have a USB drive plugged into the front even if you're using Dropbox in the cloud. And the reason is it's going to store your Dropbox collection on the USB drive, not your music. The music will stay in the cloud except for when you select it, it'll download that particular track to the player's local memory. But as far as the USB drive that you have plugged in, it will save your collection. In other words, the things that have to do with tagging your music, your hot cues, and that sort of stuff, it caches that locally on the drive for like super speedy access, rather than pulling that stuff up and down. And so let's go ahead and choose Dropbox. And so this is basically what I did. So you can see my collection here. So let's go over here really quick to Engine. This is the Engine software, free Engine software from Denon. What I've done is I just created this little kind of test crate or test collection. I called it David's Online Collection. Doesn't matter what it's called. And I just put these 4 tracks in it. And, you know, I went through, you can see I gave it some hot cues, and I made sure that all my tags were correct, and I put genres in there and all that stuff. And so I'm just going to take this, and you can see my Dropbox Personal is here now. So I'm going to just drop this collection over here. And now you can see that my tracks show up over here in Dropbox. So you can see up here, it's synchronizing. Down here, it'll tell you how long it's going to take to synchronize. And then once that's done, basically that stuff should show up over here in our Prime player. So I'm going to give that just a moment to make sure it finishes. And then let's see if we can, okay, we've got Dropbox as our source here. Let's look at our collection, and there it is. Online collection, David's Online Collection. And you can see our tracks here. So basically it is possible to just link this to your Dropbox and then browse around literally like in the file structure here. But that's not the real power of it. The real power of it is using it this way and letting it synchronize that local cache of the collection, because then all this stuff should carry over, like your hot cues and all that kind of stuff. Whoops, maybe mine hasn't synchronized yet. Let's go ahead and tell it to update to the latest database, since I went and made some changes, so maybe it hasn't fetched them yet. Okay, no problem. Okay, so I skipped a step here. We're missing some files, and I think what I skipped is I needed to actually close the Engine software so that it made the latest changes to the database. So let's see if that fixes our issue. I'm going to close Engine Prime, and then I'll reopen it. Let's make sure everything looks normal on here. We're learning together here, folks. Okay. Select Dropbox, and there we go. That looks better. Now we've got our, now we've got our music there. So let's just see if we can load one of these tracks now. Okay, now it's downloading the track, and it's going to download the track just like if it were using a streaming service. It's going to download the track to the internal memory of this player, so you don't have to worry about it cutting out in case we lose Wi-Fi or something like that. And look at this. You can see all my cue points are in there. Everything that I put in there from the original Engine software is there, even though it's synchronizing to Dropbox. So now any changes that we make to our collection there in Engine Prime software and sync to Dropbox, it'll show up here on our player just like that. And from here, everything should just work the way it normally does. That's pretty awesome. I like it. So we're running the newest version now of Engine OS. We've tested Dropbox integration. That works awesome. So let's see, let's change to our second layer. And let's go ahead and load another track from our Dropbox collection there. None of these are even really BPM compatible, but it doesn't really matter. We're just testing. It's going to download that track to memory, and boom. See, it doesn't really take that long. I'm going to skip to this fourth cue point here because that's a nice solid beat. Okay, so now we've got our two tracks playing here, and this is the way you would normally do this, playing two tracks on one deck, switching between the layers. But what if we want to see them both at the same time? Well, we just hold the Shift button and then click View. And look at that. Now we've got full-size waveforms, both tracks on the same deck, and you can still switch between layers, and you know the colors still change when you change layers, and it highlights up here which layer is selected. And now you've got this nice side-by-side view for your miniature waveforms. It's great. It's just a great view, and you know, one thing about mixing dual decks on this, especially if you've ever tried mixing like one set on a single player, you know, the dual layer functionality lets you do that, but it gets a little confusing switching between the layers back and forth. You're kind of like, oh, which mixer channel am I on again? And like, this makes it, you know, helps it make a little more sense. You've got A and B, one's on top of the other. You won't like forget where you are. Just really cool, really great stuff. Really like this dual waveform view, and this is supported on the 6000s and the 5000 series of players. So it says it added the ability to double tap to load tracks. So if we go to our collection here, we double tap on one of these. There we go, it fetches the track and loads it up. Just a couple of really simple things you can see here in the notes. Like I said, quality of life upgrades. Now the other major thing that I want to talk about with the Denon players, the Denon Prime series in general, is with the latest versions of Serato. Full Serato integration is now supported with these players. So this is pretty great. This is something that they were talking about having for a long time. And not only will it work, you know, in the traditional sort of DJ player, CDJ kind of sense, but you'll also actually get RGB waveforms here on the screen. They're not quite as big and beautiful as these, but this is actually the first time I think that Serato has actually had integrated RGB waveforms on a non-mixer product, if that makes sense. So on a player. So the fact that it has that feature at all is pretty amazing. So I'm going to come over here to my computer. I'm going to go ahead and close Engine Prime, and we're going to get into Serato DJ Pro. And once Serato comes up, I'm going to come over here to the Prime player. I'm going to hit Source, and I'm going to change this, and I'm going to hit the little laptop button up there, and it's going to restart the Denon player in computer mode. So we're going to go ahead and let it do that. It warns you not to touch anything. It's going to restart in computer mode and should connect to Serato, and then it'll ask us what decks we want to control. And you'll sort of see it light up over here in Serato, and then over here on the player, it's going to ask us to select which deck we want to control. So right now I'm connected to deck 1, and there is my Serato library up here, and this is a slightly different view than when you're playing standalone. But here are my little collections, so I can load one of these tracks, and it puts the waveform down there. So you see it's like it's a very small little waveform down there, but it is there, and it's full color, and then you have like that very small full track view down there. And that's how Serato integration works. So you have, you know, this on this side, and you have one on the other side, and they will both just kind of have this full view. At least that's the way it looks in the current iteration of the Engine OS software. You'll always have this browse view up here. At least I haven't found a way to change that yet. It would be cool if you could get like big fat waveforms, but maybe there's some limitation, some reason that that's not happening. But the Serato integration is really tight. I mean, I have no complaints about it. It works great. All my cue points show up. You know, everything that I've prepped within Serato, it just works just like a Serato controller. I don't know what else to say. It's pretty perfect in that regard. Now we can control our other deck in Serato here. Now if these aren't working, make sure that you go into Serato here and change these to internal mode. Sometimes if you have this set to you know, use timecode records or something, they won't show up, but you just click this little int right here. And then, so now we can control, you know, once again, 2 decks from 1 player. So we could load a track into the right deck. and play it just like we would a dual layer player. Switch between the layers just like that. So even within Serato, if you just want to use one player, you could do that. It's a little weird, and you don't get the dual stacked waveform view here, I don't think. Let's give it a try. Let's hit that shift view. No, so it doesn't do that. But still, it looks great. I mean, it looks just like it would on, you know, like a Rain 72 or a DJM S11. It's got that just real nice little RGB waveform. All right, so there you have it, folks. So that is the overview of the Engine OS 1.6 update and how it has improved the Prime players since their release. Once again, shout out to the DJ Hookup for letting me use this demo unit. Make sure you also check out our show. It's called the Passionate DJ Podcast. You can subscribe using your favorite podcast app, and also subscribe here on the YouTube channel for the cool YouTube version where we, show you different camera angles and what's going on in the room.